Welcome to another week of Personal Flash Paper, the RPG. I am your host, Randy Glenn, and with me, as always, Max.
Hey, Randy. Hey, everybody out there in PFP land.
I am pretty stoked. This is episode 10. We are going to be closing the book today, literally, on the skills portion of our show. But before we get started on skills, I want to give a quick shout out to our sponsor, Tabletop Games and Hobby in Overland Park, Kansas. Definitely check them out in our show notes below for Cyber Monday. They are doing a free shipping to everybody for any order you have. So go ahead and order from them and just get it shipped to your door. I know with COVID, the cases rising. It's a good idea not to have to leave your house right now. So jump on the web, search the store, get your stuff, and deliver it for free. I also want to bring up that we are doing on December 12th and 13th of December, we're going to be doing a Harvester House fundraiser. Max, Rob, Ryan, myself, and other special guests. Definitely check that out. If you want to donate, you can just send us a email or send us a direct message on Facebook. We'll take anything, $1, $2. If you live in the Kansas, Missouri area, near Kansas City at Tabletop, you can swing in and donate your canned goods, and we will be delivering it to Harvester House on the 13th as soon as we wrap up gaming it up for 24 hours for you people. And we're super excited because I think we have pretty much settled on at midnight there may be a karaoke contest for whoever is the furthest behind in the scores for Infinity Palooza. I'm still working on the name of this. I really don't know. But definitely check it out. But now on to the episode. Max, last week we left off at psychology. Are you ready?
I'm ready, Randy.
Well, for everybody else, jump into your books. This is page 89 in the big book. And under psychology, we have um, quite a few things. It has the psychology talents of counselor, and then under that we have lie detector, battlefield psychology, remote analyst, alien specialist, and then under battlefield psychology you have therapeutic insight, and under remote analyst there is psychoanalyst. What do you think about some of these?
Some of it's interesting. I think some of these talents can be a bit niche. I mean, psychology is certainly useful in the game, especially with the focus on war that can be had, but some of them provide specializations that are or things that are kind of um, real scenario specific, like alien psychologist or alien specialist. It's giving you an extra d20 when you're interacting with a member of the species you've picked to be psychologist on. So um kind of pigeonholed, but like for purposes of this talent they do count like artificial intelligences, like recreations, as an alien species. So I could see like taking that, especially like in a game with a theme of like hunting down like rogue AIs or rogue recreations and stuff, which would be very Blade Runner-y.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you. I think, what do you think of psychology as a skill in general, with, like, not just the subsections, but just how would you like to see it run in a game?
I would be using it for like sussing out lies and or trying to if the characters are trying to um make a prediction about what they think somebody's going to do, that kind of thing. It's a more investigative side of stuff. There is a battlefield role. Certainly you take side damage during combat for different things. So, and there's a talent focusing on that. But I would use it more in the sense of the interactions between characters and NPCs.
Yeah, I think that's exactly I think you slammed it home on that one. Um, so looking through some of these, like the alien specialist, do you think that you could use that on your own species, or do you think that that is always going to be an alien type of deal?
I mean, it's pretty clear they want it to be a on like not your species really, but I don't know. Like I said, it's super pigeonholed in that regard. Then,
Yeah,
um, how often are you going to be making psychology tests against a Morat or something? I don't know. It's like I said, there's scenarios where it can shine, and again, it's one of those things we've talked about where it's really about GM and players communicating, what this campaign is going to kind of be centered on, and things to think about.
yeah, I think you're completely right. I think the big thing in here is like for me, when if I'm building a character and I hit psychology, I think lie detector is kind of where I want to go with it. I think that's as far in maybe as I want to go. Um, I definitely see some people, maybe wanting psychoanalyst, but really, lie detector to me is as good as you may need to get.
Yeah, like I would, and I would maybe think, I don't know, psychoanalyst like is the third level of this tree. It's under remote analyst. Like remote analyst lets you do it remotely. I guess like when you can't be one on one. I don't know like it's allowing telehealth, but like I don't know. Maybe I would put psychoanalyst above that actually,
Okay, I can see that.
and make it a little more accessible to people. Rather
Yeah.
than have remote analyst be that second tier. Um, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, like the problem with this, I think the problem with a lot of these is they're kind of cool, but as you narrow through things that you need in skills in any RPG, that how far down it is to get psychoanalyst is just God, you're giving up so much to get there, aren't you?
Yeah, it's a big experience point expenditure.
Yeah, I really think it is. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I would want. The therapeutic insight. I just, I don't
I mean,
know. I mean,
counselor gives you the built-in reroll.
yeah,
Any dice that don't generate a success, which is kind of nice, because it's not just like your initial two dice. You could have spent momentum or get other bonuses to get the full 5d20, and you can reroll any of them. So it's certainly useful. But again, I might not take that unless it was going to be a campaign that was going to do a lot more psychology type, war type stuff, probably.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I these all the skills are so awesome, but again, you're so limited when you make a character how many skills you can use that some things
Yeah.
just have to go on the wayside.
Yeah, like getting this skill itself, I think is fine. I think any role playing game you could probably find some use. Sets out if someone's lying,
Yeah.
or maybe the best way to flatter them or something. But I don't know if I'd invest a lot in talents under it per se.
So let's talk about resistance, and that's attributed to your brawn. And this is a natural resistance or physical conditioning to better endure substances, activities, and events that would otherwise impair a character. And the way the chart works is you have your resistance, and then you have sturdy, and then it branches off. And then you have mithridatic and self medicating. And then you have just a scratch, quick recovery, fast healer. And then you have resilient. I don't think I'm going to be able to say mithridatic too often. So I'm not even going to take. I'm not taking that because I'm not saying that. No, I'm just kidding. Um,
Yeah, right.
how do you like the way this kind of brings out self?
This one I do like, and if you're going to be a combat character, you're getting resistance in some degree because it's going to add to your. I've lost the term for the wounds kind of thing, not actual harms, but what is it, vigor? It's going to help increase that. So it's going to make you more resistant to damage. And then a lot of these talents are not bad. There's a lot of resistance tests that can go on involving combat and some of the damage effects and stuff. So I think overall it's a pretty decent tree, and just how deep you want to dive into it is more a matter of what trade-offs are you willing to make, because you're buying resistance talents up, you're not going to be buying ballistics talents up as at this, you're going to be spending those XP one place or the other initially. So
I just like that you could make a whole Monty Python character on this one and just say, "Oh, it's just a scratch. It's just a scratch."
right, yeah, I, I I would love it if it was like just a flesh wound.
Yeah, it's just a flesh wound. The weird thing is, and I'm gonna be honest with you, when I looked at this, I agree with you. I think these are awesome if you're doing a comic character, but self-medicating stands out to me almost as a if you went there with a character and you were a perceptive GM, you might go, "Oh, so you're a drug addict. Perfect. So what are you going to do to get those drugs? How are
Oh
you
yeah,
maintaining that? Because you're literally that's the whole spiel is they drink too much, they're on drugs, they're doing something to
yeah,
medicate their
yeah.
mental
It's
pain.
it's one of those great talents where it's like, okay, you can use your resistance instead of discipline, but it's because you're using pharmaceuticals or alcohol or something. So, and they point out like, if you make this test and you get some complications, utilize that, because this isn't a healthy behavior. It's a good talent, but it should absolutely have drawbacks in terms of the role playing.
It really should have some sort of drawback, and it, I think there's all sorts of cool role playing things inside of the skills, but this is one of the ones where if a player takes it, I might be inclined to refund points back depending on how big of a self medicator you are. If you really role play it out, if you really want to go
Yeah, I
that
mean,
route, I might go, okay.
if they go into it, yeah, I could see that.
Which I totally dig. I think you're right though. Fast healer is super awesome. So is just a scratch, quick recovery. I mean, they're all great. I mean, they really are great. So I guess it's just where do you want to go with this in that tree itself?
Yeah, yeah. It will pay off investing in it. You just won't be. You can be pretty tanky and really recover your vigor and harms, or ignore your harms real quick. So it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, your the Mithridatic is gonna put you against what viral weapons pretty much. I would assume that's where that's kind of going with.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of stuff. Drugs, toxins, poisons.
So let's take a look as we continue to move on our dance of skills to science. Um, I I think a lot of these skills are kind of broken down into your fighty characters and your kind of your brainy characters and this is definitely your brainy characters that you're going to do, and this does tie into your intelligence, and this is a wide range of scientific principles and studies. This is practical science and theatrical,
Theoretical.
theoretical,
Yeah.
excuse me, theoretical. God, I just had like the biggest brain flagellance going on right now. And in your science talents, you have scientists, and then you kind of come down and you have genius, you have intuition, and you have specialization. And under specialization, you have applied science and genetic engineer. So with that, where are you kind of leaning for the really good and not so good?
I don't know. These are all interesting, actually. Um, I like genetic engineer. I'm on record as a fan of talents that let you sub one skill for another. That lets you use science instead of tech or medicine in certain situations, which is pretty cool. I could see that being a nomad type of doctor there. Performing some genetic engineering or putting on a augment or something. Pretty cool stuff from a role playing perspective. I'm a lit. I'm always hesitant when you get these talents like science specialization. It's like alien specialist in psychology. You pick a branch of science and then you get a bonus to it. That's something, as a player I'm going to want to talk to my GM about and be like, okay, if I buy this, am I really like am I you know pigeonholing myself here
Yeah, I agree.
in a way that isn't useful? Like, what is like, is it one I can use a lot frequently, and make sure the game master sees it the same way you do too? Like, I don't want to be taking, nanonics as my focus, and then, really not have a lot to do with nanites. But like voodoo tech could be a pretty cool choice for this, depending on your campaign.
Yeah.
Are you fighting? Uh, Combine Army a lot, or busting up a smuggling ring of voodoo tech or something, and being able to understand what you're looking at and dealing with would be very interesting.
Now, I want to say this because I think that when me and Max go down the rabbit hole of this is a specialization, right? I don't have a problem with this, and I think that this is where experience versus new has a you have to kind of come together. And if you don't really know what you're specializing in, you might want to say, well, what about this, viral weapons, and what about the tech, like, what does that go into? And you look at it, and then you say, I want to kind of do something in that, and that's when you need to explain what you're trying to do. And then, heck, sometimes players know more than some of the GMs about what they're trying to figure out, and you just need to have that conversation and then
Yeah,
stay within that lane.
yeah, absolutely. And even experienced players and GMs, it's always good to have that conversation. It's easy as a player to think, I'm going to do this and I'm going to get these uses out of it, and then the game master just isn't seeing it the same way. And um, it's easier to have that conversation in advance.
And it's also really good to have the combination where the campaign is going, because like Max said, there's nothing, and we'll say this over and over again, it's rinse repeat. There's nothing fun about picking a skill and never getting to use it ever,
Yeah,
ever.
yeah, and it's disappointing as a player. As a game master, then you've got somebody who's not really happy with their character and some of the choices. And why I would always let someone reallocate stuff if it's like this is just not working out.
Yeah.
It just is easier to head those things off at the pass. Um, and you're right. Nothing here is terrible.
No,
It
nothing is
just
horrible.
is.
No.
It's got more very focused use than broad use. Is really what you're looking at, and um, making. I don't want to say smart choices because that sounds min maxed, but making intelligent choices in terms of what is really going to be applicable.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you because I personally don't like it, and I know you're not a big fan of it. We're not big fans of min-maxing characters. I want you to make a character you're going to be happy with, but at the end of the day, when we're doing character creation or I'm making a character, I don't go, how do I make this character the absolute best at this one thing? Because that's not super fun all the time. I mean, you don't want a one-dimensional character that you have to play for months or a year or however many sessions you're doing. And so when you start getting down in these skill trees, you're really burying, deep down into there. So it can be a lot of fun, but definitely caution is definitely needed.
Yeah, and the flip side of that is the game master. Like if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to have a lot of space stuff going on, and you don't tell the players that, and no, everyone's like, I'm really not going to take any of these, space types, the skills we talked about in the previous episode, our talents. Then suddenly it's just like a slog. No one can do anything, and no one's having any fun.
Right, it really isn't. So we're gonna keep moving on, and this one is kind of fun for me.
Speaking of space,
Speaking of space, can somebody say segue? Call Paul Blart. We have a spacecraft. This is your coordination, and this is the ability to pilot any vehicle outside of the planet's atmosphere. So we had piloting, and now we have spacecraft. So there is a difference. You have space ace, and that goes into four trees. You have transatmospheric. You have alone in the night, and then you have the big one, which is your star slinger, your starfighter, and fleet action, all under each other. building on each other, and then you have fly casual. Where are you where so when you're making Han Solo and you get down to
Right?
fleet action,
I think you want to take fly casual just for the name.
yeah. So how are we gonna fly this mission? Just buckle in, guys. It's gonna be a casual flight.
Yeah, I dig. Um, this has got two talents in it that are very much like of the substitute this skill for another skill vein. Fleet action, you got to go deep to get it, but you're a commander in space battles. Like you are used to commanding a squadron of spacecraft and stuff. That's pretty cool.
Yep.
Certainly again it falls into that. If there's never any stuff, is it going to matter? But man, that would be a pretty interesting character to play. That could do that kind of stuff. Maybe the characters have their own ship in some way. That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah, so I've been super neglectful, and I must have messaged Clayton. Must have messaged me a couple times. I'm supposed to be playing in his campaign that he's running, and the hospital and COVID has just got us crushed right now. Um, but he's running like a campaign that's actually a cool idea, where you're almost like the head of a faction, like you're the kind of running things. And I actually, the more you dig into skills, the more genius his campaign kind of is, because it's something that you're going to want to dive into and take something like a fleet action, because you have a ton of people with you. And that's going to be your coordination to it. But this is another one of those things. I love what you're saying about the skills and substituting things out. But if you're never going to command a bunch of people in a ship, you need to let your players know when they
Yeah,
start diving down there.
yeah, absolutely. Um, or we're never going to pilot spacecraft, so don't take some of this stuff. It's but man, it's one of those things where if you are, I would really want to have some of this. Like I think I mentioned with the previous episodes the idea of like a campaign out on the human edge and your asteroid miners or something, and you're going to be flying these vehicles back and forth and stuff. It would be really neat to have this skill and do some cool things and get little ship combats going and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I'm telling you,
I want to
this
fly
is
casual,
yeah,
Randy.
yeah, yeah. Just keep your distance, though, Chewie. Don't make it look like you're doing it. I don't know. Fly casual. God, I love it. I love it so much. I'm telling you, one of these days when I make a character in Infinity, I'm going to blatantly rip off a character and then just rename it.
Yeah, yeah, and like this entire skill talent tree loaded with substitute spacecraft for this other skill stuff. So, a lot of neat, interesting stuff here.
Yeah, it really is, and I do like a lot of these. I do. I know I keep making the joke. I do like the fly casual, and the reason I like it is because it is a substitute, but it's a stealthy type of thing, and that
Yeah,
to me can be done a couple different
yeah,
ways, and it's kind of on the top right there, so you get in the space ace, and then you just kind of dive over, and there you go.
yeah. Like turn off all the ship lighting and all that stuff.
Hmm. Exactly. Um, so and because we just brought it up, but there is the next one is stealth, and that's off of your agility. It's just the art of going unnoticed. I don't think we're gonna have to go crazy in this because there's, obviously when you get into stealth, there's scout, living shadow, and infiltration, and then you have static, then you have disguise and impersonation, and then you have camouflage in the trees. And they all are pretty self-explanatory on what you're trying to do and how you want to do it and the ways of doing it, which I do like a lot,
Yeah,
because this stealth lends yourself to being able to, are you infiltrating or are you just kind of being an imposter? Again, the 18 references, are you going to be um, you know doing it that way, or are you going to be doing a military covert operation scout type of thing?
yeah, yeah. And yeah, each of these branches really kind of defines things in a different way, which I really like. I love the idea of Quantronic Static being able to, get some hacking bonuses, when trying to be stealthy in your hacking.
Hmm.
Um, and like, even if you don't take disguise, it doesn't mean you're not using stealth to disguise yourself. It just makes you better at doing it.
Yeah.
So these options are all still there for you, even if you don't necessarily dive into, one branch of the talent tree or the other.
And I do like where you're going with the hacking because I think sometimes people think hacking and they start diving into just that skill. And you sometimes want to go, well, what is your hacker trying to do? Maybe you need to look over here and jump into scout and then and then you're just a little bit better at not leaving a trace about jumping in and putzing around inside inside of Mayanet and
Yeah,
not being
no one's
seen.
noticing files being deleted or stuff like that. Making it harder to spot those actions.
Yeah, and I think that's perfect. So we're not gonna dive here. I personally, when I'm making characters, I like the infiltration.
Really cut out there, Randy.
Did I really? Oh my gosh. Well, I said when I'm diving into these things, I really like infiltration. I think that that's kind of a cool thing to do. What do you like in this tree?
I really like the disguise impersonation tree. I like that being under stealth instead of its own skill. I think that's really neat. And add some robustness to the stealth skill, indicating what you can do with it. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I think it is
And
cool.
then getting impersonation, letting you substitute stealth for persuade or command test when you're impersonating somebody, is very neat. It's showing that it's your training, not necessarily. You think of stealth as being this I'm hiding in the shadows thing, but they're trying to wrap it up over a broader area, and I really like that.
I could definitely see that. I think that this is one of the skill trees where you really need to know what your character wants to be when you start diving into it because they are very specific in how it's being
Yeah,
accomplished.
yeah,
So don't think that you're going to pick living shadow and disguise and think those are the same things because they're not. One of them is basically following somebody and the other one is disguising yourself.
yeah, yeah. It was very cool.
Yeah, but I think so too. So when we talk about Infinity, we talk about a lot of these things as how you survive, and they actually have a whole skill tree for survival. Now, I don't necessarily know how useful this tree is going to be, so I'm going to let you kind of dive into this. But this is your ability to find the food and the shelter. And when you get into survival, you have self sufficient, you have environment specialization, and natural allies, and one with your surroundings. You have tracker, then you have provider, and scrounger. What do you think of those?
This is another one of those set of skill or talents where as a game master, I'm going to want to say to my players, hey, these kinds of things are going to be an option here, and this will be usable in this sense. How many people really, when they run a game, make their characters worry about food and
Right.
stuff? But so is provider really going to be that useful? Like a lot of, I mean, how many D&D games have you played where anybody really tracks rations or whatever
Agreed.
that kind of thing? Not that it's not. I'm sure there are people that do it, but it's just one of those things where how useful is that going to be? But like, imagine a game on the frontier in Ariadna fighting um, uh, antipodes. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. It's a brain fart day for us, Randy.
It is a brain fart day. It's Friday.
um,
It's a Friday as we record this, and it's a day.
it's been a week, man. But like, your different kinds of Ariadne characters, and you're out in the frontier doing missions, and I could totally see using saying we're gonna survival is gonna be a real thing, man. Or I've mentioned I've had an idea for a campaign where you're like smuggling silk and capturing it from shipments on Baruch, and you're out in the desert, and survival would be hugely important in those. So it's again another one of those things where I want to be sure to communicate to my players how important it's going to be, and then try and think of uses for it, like even if it's like you could, I don't want to say catch your players with their pants down, but maybe you send them on a mission to Svartalheima for something, and suddenly they have to make a trek outside for a while, and you're requiring survival tests, just to avoid being beaten down by the cold and maybe not get some fatigue and stuff. Um, just suddenly characters not having that skill helps you communicate how truly harsh and grueling this area is. And then the one player that maybe has a point or two in it is like, "Oh, I passed," and the other ones are like all beat down and stuff. There's I think a lot of uses for this if you put your mind to it.
Yeah, I think there's two, and I think you can kind of bend these a little bit. I think Tracker is
Oh
still
yeah, absolutely.
pretty, self-explanatory with this. I think that one with your surroundings, depending on how you really want to use it, because it lets you use survival for your stealth test. But the thing is, like, I think that if you're gonna dive into survival or into stealth, that's gonna be better than the survival. So I don't know
Yeah, and like I can see people already having stealth and taking camouflage kind of
exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
I don't know. Like, then is there an argument that camouflage belongs under survival? Maybe.
it's. I mean, it's possible. I could see it. Um, I don't know. It's just a lot of these, it feels like it's kind of double dipping a little bit. Like it's almost giving you an out in case you're like, oops, I accidentally got into this thing. So I guess I'll take that. I randomly rolled into the tree. Like, oh, it's another bite at the apple. It's kind of like with the career choices, how you kind of have a couple things. So it's not too bad.
Yeah, yeah.
So, um, but with technology, that's an intelligence one. We definitely like tech. This is a tech game, so you do have your tech talents of natural engineer. Then you have grease monkey and makeshift wizard. You have design savant, snap diagnosis, and jury rig, and then you have explosive expert. Now, it's important to know that um, jury rig has nothing to do with the courts. It has nothing to do with rigging a jury. So, for those of you that heard that and are like, "What?" When you snap back into paying attention to the podcast as you're driving, that's actually just a piece of equipment breaking, wearing down, and then they have a knack for making do without. So it's not too bad for some things.
Yeah. Some of these could be a little specific, but I feel like tech is a talent that you can get a ton of use out of in an Infinity game, almost any type of campaign. Just because it is a high tech world and setting.
Yep.
Like it's one of the default skill options for Pano even. Um, so pretty cool stuff. And
I feel like this is where people get messed up in because you go to a D&D type of mindset and you're like, well, we need a
yeah,
healer, you need a fighter, a healer, maybe a tanky person, and Infinity. Oh, ooh, I'll take a hacker. Well, who's taking care of your gear? Because if you really don't want to pay for it, yeah, you know,
yeah, yeah. Like what your special forces character, maybe who's without a lot of support frequently on missions, probably has some tech to to work on some of his own gear, or maybe to get explosives expert. Um, it's a hacker ought to have some tech because you're probably going to have to try and figure out how to interface into an actual physical system, or maybe tweak your own a hacking device, that kind of thing.
yeah, no, I'm with you 100%. I like a lot of the things in here because they do drop difficulties on things. They move things around. You have it's a solution problem, and it's important for people to know this because I think sometimes when you get people into RPGs, they're afraid of not actually knowing what the character does. And so you don't necessarily have to understand being a grease monkey or a mechanic or mechanically. I am the furthest thing from mechanically inclined, but you can still play one. It's just more about rolling and saying I want to tinker with the like. I noticed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yay! So
Yeah.
remember that.
Like I really like the idea of design savant. Um, in a game where you don't have cash, you are just making rolls to buy items. The idea of being able to design or build a piece of equipment is pretty cool. And I feel like the players in Game Master are a little more free to do stuff like that in this kind of system.
Yeah, that is a very nice thing. I like snap diagnosis, which is like, what's wrong with it? Can we fix it? Yes or no? And how quick are you analyzing the
Right?
problem?
Yeah.
I think that that's huge. Um, the jury rig is also pretty cool in my opinion. If it's not working, can I deal without it? Perfect. Let's move on. And I always
Yeah,
think of the
and
com
it's not
links.
even like this isn't a permanent fix. Like you're just getting it running for a little while. Like we're gonna put some duct tape on this and do this here and maybe strap this up here and off we go and we're gonna get an hour out of this.
Yeah, it's funny that it says jury rig, and maybe my whole life I've said this wrong, but I always thought it was jerry rig. Um, that's how he said it. I could have swore in the army as people said jerry rig it.
I think it works either way,
Okay, because
you know,
I could be totally wrong, but all I know is there is nothing that 100-mile-an-hour tape cannot fix.
right?
I know that it works. Some 550 cord 100-mile-an-hour tape. Let's get this done. That was the best thing to do. And because I got the line wrong, this is another segue into blatant thievery. I These are the characters. These are the characters that if you're going to build one, this is the skill tree for you because this is the underworld type of stuff. It does have thief, obviously, is the where it starts off. You have life of crime. You have reconnaissance, inconspicuous, misdirection. Then you have pickpocket, and then you have bypass security. Now, the bypass security is great, and I want to ask you this question because I've read this, the blurb. I'm going to read it to everybody. The character has studied different security systems and has developed a broad range of different techniques to mitigate their efficiency. Anytime the character attempts to pick a lock or overcome a security system, regardless of whether it is electronic or mechanical, they may re-roll a number of d20s equal to the ranks in bypass security. The results of the reroll dice must be accepted. Would you put this with hacking?
um, no, but I think certain kinds of hackers would want both. For me, this has to be a physical device, and it's going to be something. Um, Let me step back a minute. The Venn diagram of what security system you bypass with hacking and what you bypass with bypass security, those circles overlap. Um, clear like a master lock, you got to pick it right or know how to
Yeah,
take it apart or something. Maybe there is electronic lock, a keypad or a hand like a handprint scanner or something that isn't in any way connected to the network, so you can't hack it. So you're going to use this talent to help get a better thievery roll on it. But if it is something that is connected in some way to the network around it, then I would also allow for hacking on it. I think I've mentioned in an episode when you look at the pre-written adventures Modifius does, they really try and cover their bases with providing multiple routes through stuff. So you're not at a dead end and an impasse because somebody doesn't have the one skill you need kind of thing. And so this is kind of that double layer of you don't have a hacker but you can get around a lot of stuff this way.
okay, so we disagree. So this is one put the chalk this is one of the times that we disagree. I was hoping you weren't going to say this. I was hoping you were just to agree with me and we could have just moved on because it's so much better when everybody agrees with me. Um, I look at it. See, this is why I love RPGs so much because you can literally look at the game, and as long as everybody's on board with the way you're interpreting a rule, it is what it is. Move on. I do like that hacking. physical and electronical. They do. I agree completely with you. But I think of like the computers that people may use for business, right? Because it's a computer and it might not be on a network, but you might be trying to bypass into. I always think of the movies where they have like the little key card, and they plug it in, and or ATM card, and it
Yep.
starts showing the codes. I think that's more hacking than it is thievery. I think it's kind of both, right? So I would allow the hacking role with I would allow
Yeah.
this to go jump in with the hacking, but I agree with you. If it's a master lock, if it's electronic and you are a hacker and you had this too, and we talked about it, I would let you do it. But I
Yeah, for me, that's like that world where that's that area where those two Venn diagram,
yeah,
those two circles overlap.
overlap. Yeah, exactly. But here's what I will say though, is that if I find a player getting that creative with it, trust me when I say there's gonna be a lot of mechanical locks. It's just you're just gonna run into a lot of mechanical.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and
not
in
gonna
a
be a lot of
world
this.
of quantronic hacking, how many people would fall back on now requiring a brute force mechanical lock?
Right.
You can't. You're not going to hack that. It is. I could see those things being still very much in demand. Like you go to your bank, you have a safety deposit box. It's still that dual key lock system.
Exactly.
And I got a feeling there's some vaults on Tunguska that are exactly the same way.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. And when I say that you're going to see a lot, if you pick this, if you were a hacker and you had bypass security, I think to give you a challenge, you're probably going to see the one that's a little bit more difficult for you than the one that's
Right?
just going to be easy, easy,
Yeah.
easy, easy, easy. But again, I don't know how often in any game you're really going to be picking a lock, right? Don't you think that that's like one of those things like food. Like I assume that you're going to get through the lock most of the time until it's super important, and then
Yeah.
here we go.
It comes back to that. Most of the time, your characters are going to succeed. It's about the degree of success. Like, what do these, you're going to succeed now. So you've generated two momentum. Are you going to bank those? Are you going to, use it to cut down the time it took you to pick this lock, or, try and use that to hide your actions or something? Um, so yeah, it's really not about the characters failing so much as how grandly are they going to succeed.
Yeah, and I
And it's
and
one of the
I
things I like about the game is it's heroic in that sense. Like, people will fail skill checks and stuff. You're not going to make every single one, but most of the time you're succeeding. And how big is it, and what does that let you roll on to the next thing to do? So
right, and
um
failing a
but I
skill
totally get
check.
what you're saying.
Yeah, and failing a skill check, there is consequences to that. So when you get, I am notorious for playing characters that get cute with things. I don't know why I do it. Call it hubris. I get cute with little tasks sometimes, and I'm the person that would be like, "Oh, I'm just gonna pick the lock. You succeed." But I want to nail this though. All right, if you really want to roll it, and I'm the guy that rolls the one, right? Like right there, I roll the
Right?
one,
Yeah.
and then here we go. So I don't know. I think it's fun. I also think the thievery thing, that the whole chart is in fact fun, just because
Yeah,
it's not all
it reminds me
thieving.
of the stealth talent, the skill
Yes,
and
it
talent
is.
tree.
Yes.
Like a Submundo character, man, I'm gonna want Life of Crime. And I think, man, there's so many things you could do with a Submundo type setting campaign. I think, and these talents would especially shine. Like, think about a Submundo hacker with also thievery, and they've taken bypass security and stuff. Like, they're not taking these easy lock jobs. You're hiring them to break into the toughest places. you know
You're super right, and I
or be
think
the
that
guy that, or you could build your talents and be the guy that's casing out places with surreptitious reconnaissance and inconspicuous and stuff.
yeah, and this is why one of those things, when we made character creation, weeks ago, we had a lot of fun with it. Max picked, used some life points, picked, and I totally rolled. When you, the ability to pick certain things, is when you have a character in mind, you need to pick where you got to pick because that affects your skills. Like, Max was talking about Pano. When you get Pano, you get skill sets attached. There's nothing worse than getting to a homeworld planet, getting it, and then going, God dang it. Ugh, man, I'm never going to be able to play the, blah, 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 blah. So just remember that. And then when you get in these skill trees, have a vision of what you're going for, and then make sure at all times talk to the game master if you're a new player, because you want to know if what you're picking is actually what you think it is. Like me and Max just had a disagreement over bypass security. We're a little different. We see it slightly differently. I wouldn't say that it's like some earth changing thing, right?
You're marginally wrong on it, Randy.
Exactly. I am marginally right on this, and I think that the more right I am, which is exponentially at this point, it just makes the game better for you and the player. Because if I would have picked this and I would have read it and I thought, oh my god, I'm making this badass hacker, and then 3 sessions in, I go, I'm gonna do this, and Max goes, yeah, that's not how that works. What do you mean that's not, like I'm reading it?
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, it's not how I want to. It's not how I play it. Like, I don't see it that way. And then there's this you're wasting game time with a silly argument that doesn't need to be
yeah,
had.
yeah. It's back to that. It's always better to head it off at the pass. And this is one of those things where it is so borderline in so many cases. I think there's a great argument to be made for how you see it, and at the table at least, I would be like, okay, let's just do it this way, and then we can discuss it more afterwards. It is it's the interesting thing about a high tech science fiction game setting is so many things. There's just some overlap there, like I see this bypass security. I think of Edward Furlong in Terminator 2 putting the card in the
Yeah,
ATM, and money starts flying out. But how many people would call that hacking?
right. See,
It
I would.
is, yeah. So it's a totally valid thing, and it always pays to discuss these things in advance. And how do you really see this? But at the same time, if it does come up at your table, you know, you could always default to the tried and true tabletop game system. You can't decide on a rule. Roll a d6. So 1, 2, 3, it works. 4, 5, 6, it doesn't. Or I would default and to the player, unless it's truly game breaking, like he's going to do this, and then suddenly the entire plot falls apart. I would just allow it, and then you can discuss it before the next session.
Yeah,
And some of these are the mindset you approach running or playing in a game with. And we talk about it a lot, but it's a very important aspect of role playing.
it really is. And the other thing that you need to consider when you're doing this is when you're picking your skills is your attributes. Your agility, your awareness, your brawn, your those things you need to really be paying attention to those scores
Yeah,
because if you're not that we've talked about the numbers aren't huge in this and the changing of things. It's not like D&D where it's you're dropping down into what is it, a 7, 8, and then you can go all the way up to 18, and it just there's these huge numbers, and minuses and this that. But you definitely don't want to try to make a acrobatic type thief and your agility is a 7.
yeah,
Like
yeah,
you're going the wrong way.
yeah. And I will say it's hard to come out of the character creation without it's usually nothing below an 8. I feel like there's almost always bonuses to something, to
Yeah.
everything to some degree. But yeah, or if you're going to try and do that and play that character who's super acrobatic and your agility is only a 7, you're going to have to be working to max that out and expect to be kind of a bit of a comedy bit in terms of how much you're going to fail claiming to be this amazing acrobat. So dive into the role playing aspect of that if you want to do that. But yeah, you won't succeed a lot.
Yeah, and I'm looking. So if you want to see a character done with their skills, that's on page 74, and they do Cassandra the Bounty Hunter. Okay, and this is one of the characters that gets rolled up as you're going through. And on this character's sheet, there's they have 10 skills to start the game. I mean, that's a lot of skills.
Yeah.
And this person, the game itself, they made a bounty hunter, and she has attribute lines of it. That they show it, and then they show the skills, and they have acrobatics, athletics, ballistics, close combat, education, observation, resistance, stealth, survival, and tech. And then there's a ton of experience in some of these. And then you have its focus, and then there's three signature skills inside of there. So it's not too bad. I mean, it's not a horrible
Yeah, it's
thing.
a pretty cool looking character. The lowest statistic is a 7, which is personality. She didn't buy anything really related to personality, but did take stuff that kind of plays into her better stats. And can do. You can always test without having the skill. You're just at a increased risk of a catastrophe happening.
Yeah.
But is trained in a lot of stuff, even if it's just 1 point. It's going to help, uh, and reduces that risk of like that catastrophic failure occurring.
Right. And then, which is super helpful. And then you can see kind of where the book was going. And I think this is the fun part where everybody kind of goes, well, bounty hunter, that's kind of weird. But then the talents inside of the skills are her rigorous training, her marksman, clear shot, scout, and living shadow. So I feel like there are some classes that, because there really isn't classes in this game. There's just, what you are. But I think when you make yourself, I know that there are characters that do great right out Jump Street, right? This is they're a very focused bam type of character. And then you have characters when people like make bounty hunters, and you're like, oh man, here we go. And they're spread out a bunch of skills, and as they get higher up in level, they get more and more badass, as opposed to the person. I always think of in D&D, the barbarian versus the paladin. The barbarian, level one barbarian, just here we go. And the paladin kind of hits hard, kind of does this, kind of. And then as you level up, you're like, oh my God, here comes the paladin. Uh oh. And then it just gets better, better. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And but what I like about this, system is you don't have that character class. It's more about the careers ultimately shaping your character. And she when you look at that, and when you're once you're familiar with the game system, she feels like a pretty good character to walk out with. You could always make bad choices, but it's an interesting, very playable character, and that's what I really like about skill-based systems.
Yeah, me too. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy a lot of the things when you get down into the skills of this game. I like that you could say I'm making a thief, and you're not really making a thief type of character. Even if you dive into the skill, you might be more making a con man, um,
Yep.
a Teflon character, if you will, one that shrugs off all things that are truthful. I think you should do that. I think that would be hilarious, in a game. You should definitely try it. But it also gives you the ability to make the traditional thief in the sense of pickpocketing, and being stealthy, stealing, and moving on and on. Now, here's a question that I do have for you though, Max, because you can pickpocket, and money isn't really a thing. So, what are you really pickpocketing in this type of game?
Maybe someone's security card or another item of some kind. Um, I might even allow pickpocket to stealthily take something off someone's desk and secure it on my person. Um, you know, an almost sleight of hand type thing, if you will.
Yeah, I can definitely see doing all of those things. I think you're spot on with it because there is no money. But I think
Or sorry, to me interrupt. Like even and it points it out in the talent, like putting it on somebody.
yes,
So and again, just because you don't take the talent doesn't mean you can't do it. The talent just makes you better at doing it.
yeah, it really
So
does make you better doing it. And this is the other thing that I don't know how. This is kind of weird because I hate putting people in this position when people are making characters, but I am a big fan of rolling characters up as a group. And the reason I would rather do everything as a group than individually is as people start rolling things up, and Max and I have been using the computer generated thing here. There's nothing substitutes dice rolling. I think that's way better. But when you start rolling dice, you start seeing what people are getting stat wise, and they start getting certain things, and your character starts taking shape, and people go, "Oh, I got this. Okay, hold on a second. Well, maybe we don't need three hackers." So I was like, "What do you want to do instead? I mean, like, is this what you want to do?" And then kind of go, "Oh man, what if I made like a thief that helps with your hacking? And what if I was more like the bot? Like, and you start fleshing out your party even in character
Yeah.
creation, so that
Yeah.
people know what they're doing, and it also gives people the opportunity to say, "Well, hold on a second. Is this going to be?" Because when you're in a group and somebody asks a question, sometimes you don't even know that you're supposed to ask that question or think of doing it, and then people go, "Oh my god, yeah, we don't have that. Why don't we have that? Hold on a second. Who's fighting anything? If we get caught doing this, who's gonna fight?" And then you're like, "Oh,
Yeah.
we don't have anybody. Oh, this is
Yeah.
bad."
Hell, can anybody patch themselves up
Yep.
or
Who's taking
fix
care of
our
the
gear
gear?
or
Yeah.
whatever?
Can anybody do that? And when you have smaller games, now I know that we're throwing a lot of information at people, but when you really think about it, the job of the GM isn't to be a dick and be like, "Oh my God, they don't have a medic. Uh oh, here we go."
Or
But
maybe I want to put it on my Geist.
yes, but but here's the thing though, is that there are some things that if you don't do as a character, as a group, I won't even let people start unless we do certain things, right? So if like if three people make a hacker and it's new people, newer players, and that's kind of what we're going to be getting maybe in this upcoming campaign. When you say that, I might say, hey guys, or gals, hey people, let me be politically correct. We don't have this, but we have three of these. Does anybody want to respect before we launch into this? And if nobody does, you might go, okay, well this is going to be a bumpy ride for all of us unless somebody does this. Like, um, I've been
Yeah.
known to even put in NPCs that kind of help them out at times, but I'm not going to just let people willy nilly play four hackers. Like, this isn't even a
Yeah.
hacking thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's why you're absolutely right. I really like character creation as a group because then you're there with the GM and the other players, and you can hash these things out and be all on the same page and have a good idea of what this campaign is about. So when you make that character, the GM's there to say, you're not going to get a lot of use for this, or this will be really important.
Yeah, it's very difficult to do. I think people need to really understand that. But I also think that people, when you do a campaign and you lay out for them, be upfront with what you want. If you're not that person, you're just the go with the flow person, then be it. But if there's an idea in your head of what you want to be, um, you know, if Max is running a campaign and it's on Dawn, and it's going to be a slugfest through, where we're just going to be planetside the whole time. And I go, man, I really want to make a pilot, a fighter pilot type of thing, like a spaceship. And Max might just go, that's not. I mean, you can make it and act like it, but just know that in this campaign there is none of that. Like, we're not going to be in space. But if you have a good group and this is the first, this is a homebrew and it's going to go for a long time, we might get there, but it won't be for several months of in-game playing. So this might be kind of crappy for you for a while, and that's your choice. I mean, that's really up to you.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So on that note, Max, we have killed skills and talents.
Yeah. Yeah, we have. What I thought might make a two-part episode ended up being 3 full hours and then some.
This is crazy that we actually took this long. I hope everybody enjoyed it as much as we did, because I love talking about skills. I like what ifing things. I love doing it. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. And feedback always welcome. Everybody's got a different view on these things, as evidenced by Randy and I on bypass security. So you may have some ideas on skill and talent use that we didn't even stumble upon. So
Yes.
we'd love to hear that stuff.
And because of popular demand, next week we will crack into Aleph, I believe.
We're gonna do it.
We are going into Aleph. So this will be next week. We are going to be doing the fluff behind Aleph. Talking about some of the stories, some of the things. This will be going right from the PDF that we have about Aleph. So if you're interested in some of the stuff behind Aleph, the people pulling the strings, next week will definitely be the episode for you.
Excellent.
And on that note, Max, thanks for another good week.
Great time as always, Randy.
All right, buddy. Well, I will talk to you later. Hopefully, Rob doesn't lose the episode.
Yeah, very much so.
All right, till next weekend. See y'all later.
Later.
Have you visited Tabletop Game and Hobbies online web store through the personal flash paper link and thought, I'd really like to buy something, but I just can't afford $100 for the free shipping and handling? Well, fear not, because on November 30th, 2020, Tabletop Game and Hobby for Cyber Monday is offering free shipping and handling for all online purchases November 30th only. So if you want to buy something, go for it. So remember, that's for Cyber Monday, 30 November 2020. Free shipping and handling to addresses in the United States of America. Just click on the link in the show notes, and the Tabletop web store awaits for your shopping pleasure.
Background music. Flying Species. The Yellow Flying Cog. The use of these human works of music is granted under the current Creative Commons license terms and agreements. From the freemusicarchive.org from the artists as listed. Thank you.